The last words I spoke to my parents were, "I don't feel well." 3 days later, I woke up in a hospital bed, unable to make a sound. The doctors called it psychogenic aphonia, complete voice loss triggered by severe trauma. My throat was physically fine, but my voice had simply vanished. My name is Aria Chen, and at 16, I became the family's greatest disappointment. The irony of my name, Aria, a melody, became a cruel joke when I could no longer speak, let alone sing. How long will this last? My mother demanded, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the doctor's desk. She hadn't even looked at me since the diagnosis. "It's difficult to say," the doctor explained gently. "With therapy and support, patients usually recover within months, sometimes years." "Years?" My father interrupted, his face darkening. "That's impossible. Marcus has his conservatory auditions coming up. We can't have this disrupting his practice schedule." Ah yes, Marcus, my younger brother, the musical prodigy, the one whose piano playing had filled our house since he was 3. While I had been the quiet one, reading books and writing stories in my journal, Marcus had been destined for greatness. Now, at 14, he was preparing for the prestigious Palmer Conservatory, and nothing could stand in his way, not even his mute sister. I sat in my Aunt May's kitchen a week later, watching my mother unpack the single suitcase she packed for me. "It's just temporary," she said, though her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Until you sort yourself out." Aunt May stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. Unlike my mother's pristine appearance, May wore paint-splattered jeans and a faded t-shirt. Her small house smelled like turpentine and coffee. She was an art teacher at the local high school. "Elena," May said, her voice sharp. "This isn't right. She needs her family now more than ever." "She needs specialized care," my mother replied smoothly, "and we need to focus on Marcus. The conservatory scouts are coming next month. We can't have any distractions." I wanted to scream to tell her I was her daughter, not a distraction, but my throat remained frozen, locked in its silent prison. Instead, I pulled out my phone and typed, "It's okay, Mom, I understand." She barely glanced at the screen. "See, she understands. We'll visit when we can." They didn't visit, not once in the months that followed. Aunt May became my voice, my advocate, my everything. She enrolled me in a new school, learned sign language alongside me, and never once made me feel like a burden. But it was what happened in her basement that changed everything. "Come here," she said one evening, leading me down the creaky stairs. "I want to show you something." The basement was her art studio, but in one corner stood something unexpected, an old upright piano, its wood worn but well-loved. "It was your grandmother's," May explained, running her hand along the keys. "She taught me to play, but I never had the passion for it." "Maybe you will." I shook my head, pointing to my throat. What good was a piano to someone who couldn't sing? "Music isn't just about singing, honey," May said softly. "Sometimes it's about finding your voice in other ways." That night, after May went to bed, I crept down to the basement. In the dim light, I placed my fingers on the keys, remembering the basic lessons I'd had as a child before everyone decided Marcus was the musical one. I pressed a key, feeling the vibration travel up my arms. Then another, and another. Something stirred inside me, a feeling I couldn't explain. Though my throat remained silent, my fingers began to move, creating sounds that seemed to come from somewhere deep within. It wasn't practiced or perfect like Marcus's playing. It was raw, emotional, real. For the first time since losing my voice, I felt like I was speaking. Every night after that, I would wait until May went to sleep, then sneak down to the piano. I taught myself to play by feeling, by letting my emotions guide my fingers. Without the pressure of having to be perfect, without the constant comparison to Marcus, I discovered something extraordinary. I could write music, not just simple tidums, but complex compositions that expressed everything I couldn't say. Every piece was a story, my story. The anger, the abandonment, the discovery of a new kind of voice. May found me one morning, asleep at the piano, sheet music scattered around me. She picked up one of the pages, her eyes widening as she read the notes. "Aria," she whispered, shaking me gently awake. "Did you write this?" I nodded, suddenly afraid she would tell me to stop, to not compete with Marcus's legacy. Instead, she smiled, tears in her eyes. "I think," she said carefully, "it's time the world heard what you have to say." Little did I know that those words would set in motion a chain of events that would shake my family to its core. 6 months into my stay with Aunt May, my compositions had grown from simple melodies to complex orchestral pieces. My inability to speak had somehow heightened my ability to hear music in everything, in the rhythm of rain on windows, in the pattern of footsteps on stairs, in the cadence of sign language flowing from my hands. May connected me with her friend Dr. Harrison, a music professor at the local university. The first time he looked at my compositions, his hands trembled. This is, he paused, adjusting his glasses, extraordinary. The emotional complexity, the layering of themes. How old did you say you were? I held up my phone. 17 next month. He shook his head in amazement. I'd like to work with you, if you're willing. These pieces deserve to be heard. Over the next few months, Dr. Harrison mentored me, helping me refine my compositions while never trying to change their raw emotional core. He introduced me to music software that allowed me to create full orchestral arrangements on my computer. While my brother practiced his classical pieces for conservatory auditions, I was creating something entirely new. One day, Dr. Harrison arrived at our house practically bouncing with excitement. The University Symphony Orchestra has an opening in their spring showcase, he announced. I submitted your piece, Silence Speaks. They want to perform it. My hands shook so badly I could barely type. But they don't know about me, about my condition. They know exactly who you are, he replied firmly. They want to meet the composer. May squeezed my shoulder. It's time, honey. You can't hide your light forever. The orchestra rehearsals were both terrifying and exhilarating. Unable to verbally direct the musicians, I learned to conduct through gesture and expression. My hands painting the emotions I wanted them to convey. The musicians, initially skeptical of a teenage composer, especially one who couldn't speak, soon became my most passionate advocates. It's like she hears layers of music we didn't even know existed. I overheard the first violinist tell Dr. Harrison. The night before the showcase, I received my first text from home in months. It was from Marcus. Mom and Dad are making me headline a recital at Palmer Conservatory tomorrow night. Same time as your show. I'm sorry. I stared at the message, tears blurring my vision. Of course they'd scheduled it at the same time. They probably thought they were being kind, giving me an excuse not to invite them to my performance. May found me in the basement, sitting at the piano. Your parents called, she said quietly. They wanted to know if you'd be attending Marcus's recital. I shook my head, fingers moving silently over the keys. I told them you had a prior commitment. They didn't ask what it was. The next morning, as I got ready for the biggest night of my life, another text arrived. This time from my mother. I hope you're not disappointing your aunt the way you disappointed us. Something snapped inside me. I grabbed my phone and typed out a response I never thought I'd have the courage to send. Come to the university concert hall tonight at 8. See how disappointing I am. Then I turned off my phone. The concert hall was packed that evening. My piece was scheduled last, after works by Beethoven and Tchaikovsky. As I waited backstage, watching the orchestra tune their instruments, I felt strangely calm. This was my voice now, bigger and more powerful than anything I could have said with words. Dr. Harrison had kept my identity a surprise, listing the composer simply as A. Chen in the program. As the time approached for my piece, he stepped onto the stage to introduce it. Our final piece tonight is a contemporary work titled Silence Speaks, he began. Its composer. He was interrupted by the sound of the auditorium doors opening. In the bright light from the lobby, I saw them, my parents, looking confused and slightly annoyed at being there at all. They must have decided to come prove their point about my disappointment. Perfect timing. Dr. Harrison continued. Its composer is one of the most remarkable young musicians I've ever encountered. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Miss Aria Chen. I walked out into the spotlight, dressed in black, my head held high. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth, my father's face drain of color. Standing before the orchestra, I lifted my hands. In the moment before the music began, I caught my mother's eye and smiled. Then I brought my hands down, and the first notes of my symphony filled the air. The piece I'd written was my story. The fear, the loss, the abandonment, but also the discovery, the joy, and the triumph. As I conducted, I poured every unspoken word, every silenced emotion into my gestures. The orchestra responded, playing with an intensity that took my breath away. In that moment, I wasn't just speaking. I was soaring. The standing ovation lasted for 7 minutes. I counted every second, watching through tears as the audience rose to their feet, their applause thundering through the concert hall. Dr. Harrison had to practically push me back onto the stage for 3 curtain calls. But I couldn't take my eyes off my parents. They remained seated, frozen in their chairs, staring at me like they were seeing a ghost, or perhaps seeing me for the first time. My mother's perfect makeup was streaked with tears, and my father's hands gripped the armrests so tightly his knuckles were white. Backstage, after the performance, May hugged me fiercely. "They're waiting in the green room," she whispered. "You don't have to see them if you don't want to." I pulled out my phone and typed, "I want to. I'm not hiding anymore." They stood awkwardly when I entered, my mother clutching her designer handbag like a shield. The silence between us felt different now, heavy with everything they just witnessed. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling. "Aria, we had no idea." I held up my phone, my fingers steady. "You never asked." "The music," my father said, running a hand through his graying hair. It was about us, wasn't it? About what we did to you." I nodded. There was no point denying it. Every note had spoken of their betrayal, their dismissal, their choice to throw away one child for the sake of another. "We thought we were doing what was best," my mother started, but I held up my hand, stopping her. I typed quickly, showing them the screen. "Best for who? For Marcus? For your reputation? I didn't need you to fix me. I needed you to love me." My father sat down heavily in one of the green room chairs. "Marcus called us," he said quietly. "Right after his recital. He asked why we never told him where you were, why we never let him visit. He walked off stage in the middle of his performance when he found out it was the same night as your show. That surprised me. Marcus and I had never been close, but perhaps I wasn't the only one suffering under our parents' rigid expectations." The door opened and Dr. Harrison entered with a man I didn't recognize. My mother quickly wiped her eyes, putting on her social smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," Dr. Harrison said, his voice barely containing his excitement. "This is David Porter from the National Symphony Orchestra. He'd like to speak with Aria about commissioning a piece for their upcoming season." My parents' jaws dropped simultaneously. Mr. Porter stepped forward, extending his hand to me. "Miss Chen, your composition tonight was remarkable. We'd be honored to premiere your next work at the Kennedy Center. With full creative control, of course." I stared at him, then at my phone, my hands suddenly unable to form words. May stepped in smoothly, explaining my condition to Mr. Porter, who didn't bat an eye. "Music transcends speech," he said simply. "You've proven that tonight." After they left, my mother turned to me, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Aria, please, can we try again? We were wrong, so terribly wrong." I looked at her, then at my father, seeing the regret in their eyes. Slowly, I typed out my response. "I'm not coming home. My life is with Aunt May now. But maybe we can start over. As equals this time. Not as the disappointed parents and the broken daughter, but as people who might learn to understand each other." My father nodded, tears falling freely now. "We don't deserve a second chance." "No," I typed. "But I deserve the chance to forgive you. On my terms." 2 years later, I stood on the stage of the Kennedy Center, conducting my third symphony, Bridge Over Silence. My parents sat in the front row, next to May. They had attended every premiere, every performance, slowly rebuilding our relationship one concert at a time. Marcus was there too, having chosen a different path after that night. He now studied music therapy, working with trauma patients, helping them find their own ways to speak without words. My